All right, so today we are going to be discussing the mini activity module one, topic one. So to find that, you're going to go to content. You're going to go down to module one. And right here in week one, we're going to scroll down in that folder and we're going to come down here to mini activity 1.1. Click on that. Once you click on that, you're going to see all the things that I have attached. So every assignment's going to be like this where there's attachments. Here you can see the written instructions for the mini activity, the grading rubric, and then if I have any PowerPoints for that particular assignment, then those PowerPoints will be loaded there as well for you to reference. And then once I finish the video, there will be a link right here for the video. So on all of the assignments, there will be a video, and you want to make sure you watch your video first before you complete the assignment because there will always be additional information in the video or examples, that kind of thing. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at that instructions sheet. So for this activity, you will be creating a mock email heading. All right. We'll use this email heading template in other assignments throughout the course. So you do want to make sure that you save this as a template so that you can go back and refer to it as needed. Okay. In this assignment, not only are you creating that actual mock email heading template, which you'll see is going to look just like this when we're done, but then in the body, you're going to then kind of talk to me about what all of the components of an email are. And so you can see it explains there all the different questions that you need to answer in order to complete this assignment and explain all the different outlines. Okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to go over my PowerPoint here and just kind of talk about what all of those components in an email heading is and how do we use them. So first off, the mock email is literally just this. It's your to, your from, your CC, your BCC, and your subject line, along with a long underscore line that separates the mock email heading from the body of the email. Now, your to line is whoever it's to, right? That one's pretty easy. Everybody knows when you send an email, it's to whoever you want it to go to. This is going to be your primary audience, your direct audience, the person specifically that you want to pay attention to this email and do something with. But you'll see that there's sometimes a secondary audience that needs to have information as well. And that's who's going to go into that CC line, right? Anybody else who might need to stay up to date with what's happening with a project, anyone else who may be able to answer questions, even if they are more of an indirect path, anyone who is part of the process but not necessarily ready to answer questions yet, but need to be able to go back and see what's happened in the past. And so it just allows everybody to stay on the same page. So that's how you're going to use that to and your CC line. Um, now, um, remember, an email can only ever come from one person. So this from line should never have more than one name on it, right? Whose name is that? That's yours, right? Your information goes right here. If you are working as a group, it's still only going to come from one person in your group. So you would be in the from line, and then all your other group members or team members would go in that CC line because everybody needs to stay up to date on what's going on, right? If they are part of the project, they need to be in the CC line. Same thing in the real world, right? If they are part of the project, they need to be part of the CC line so they can stay up to date on what those different emails are that are adding additional information. Now, a BCC line is called a blind carbon copy. So this is used typically when you want to share information with someone, but they're not necessarily part of they don't need to see all the emails of replies when everybody replies all. Okay. They just need to know that you sent this email for whatever reason. Another example might be if you are in a situation where you don't necessarily want everyone to know that you included the manager, right? Maybe something sketchy is going on and you just need to make sure that they see that this is happening. Then that's another area that you could blind carbon copy someone on. Or if you're struggling in a group project in a class and you don't necessarily want the other people in the group to see that you are showing the professor that something is not going right, then you could blind carbon copy the professor. So those are just a couple of examples. Um, but the biggest reason that they use it in business environments really is about letting, let's say, the primary manager know that you guys are having a meeting on the 12th, but you don't need the primary manager to be a part of that meeting, and you don't necessarily need them to see any additional information about the meeting other than the fact that it's happening. So that's typically the kind of thing that the blind carbon copy is used for. Now, the subject line, that is where we really need to talk about how do we create a good subject line. Because we never want to leave a subject line with question or important, right? Those are way too vague. They don't give us enough information. Think about what the subject line is for, right? The subject line is your quick glimpse into what that email is about. It allows us as business people to be able to prioritize what emails we're going to look at right now, right? We don't always have time to go through and open every single email and determine, what we're going to do with it. Instead, we utilize that subject line to prioritize. What do I need to look at right this second versus what can I look at later when I've got a few extra minutes? Okay. It also allows us to have a better idea of, is this something that I need to actually take action on? Or is this something that I'm just carbon copied on and I just need to follow the trend of what's happening with a project? So it just gives us an idea how to prioritize our email and be a little more efficient and effective at work. So you want to make sure that it has a very clear purpose, right? What action or what information does this email actually involve? And again, keep from using super vague things like question or important, okay? It helps us prioritize, like I already said. And then also, really importantly, it allows us to search later for the information if we need to go back to it, right? Especially in a business environment, we oftentimes have several things that we're working on at the same time, and we may need to search in our email to go back to that project to look at where we're actually at as a reminder. And so it really does a great job of maintaining a history for us as long as it's nice and organized and easy to find. So you want to make sure that you use those subject lines appropriately for searching. You do want to be very clear and concise, right? We don't want a whole paragraph on our subject line, and we don't want only a couple of words. We want about 6 to 10 words is the ideal subject line, and it just really makes sure that you're putting the most important words first and that you're prioritizing what the subject of this email is. Okay, we'll talk here in a little bit about making sure that you keep your emails to a single topic and not multiple topics. Maintain a very professional tone, especially in your subject line. You don't want emojis, you don't want slang, you don't want to use super casual phrasing. You want to make sure that it's very concise, very clear, very business professional. All right. We also want to make sure that it's action oriented if needed. So if it's something that you need the other person to take action on, then you start with action required or request or reminder or approval is needed, those kind of things. And that allows that person to know that this is a priority email without saying something like important and it being very vague. This is more specific. Important, why? Because it requires action, it requires a request, it's a reminder of something, or it needs approval. Always make sure you're honest and accurate. This especially comes into play when you're emailing customers. You never want anything to be misleading. You don't want to damage the trust that you have built with your customers or especially with your other employees or fellow employees, okay? Managers, those kind of things. So always keep it very professional, very honest, and as accurate as possible. Any time indicators can be used here as well. So, for example, if something needs to be completed by March 12th, then you would put March 12th right there in that subject line. Meeting follow up April 2nd, right? So basically, April 2nd is saying that's when the meeting was, and the notes or the email is a follow up from that meeting. Consistent formatting, you also want to make sure that you are avoiding all caps, right? Remember, all caps means that you are yelling at someone, and we don't want to do that. We do not want to yell at someone because I have spelling error. And so we want to avoid all caps. You can use title case, which is where you're basically just capitalizing the first letter of each word. Or you can use sentence case, which is where you capitalize the first letter of the entire thing and then The rest of it is lowercase. So either one is totally fine and acceptable, just not all caps. All right, so subject lines. Here's some examples of good subject lines and a good formula to follow. So basically, you want to start with either your action or your topic, and then you want to give your specific details, and then any dates or deadlines can be added as well. So, for example, request colon conference room reservation for April 10th. Right? It's very obvious what that email is about. It's about trying to get a conference room scheduled for April the 10th. Right? There's no question on what that's going to be about. You know exactly how to handle that email. Update student engagement survey results. You know what's going to be inside, right? There's no guessing. Reminder resume draft due by 5 p.m., right? Schedule confirmation for client presentation. Meeting follow up, meeting proposal, March 12th, right? So this is a follow up from a meeting that was about marketing proposals on March 12th. And in this class specifically, when you email me, you'll be using your course name as the topic. So business 20401 dash, whatever your specific section is. Okay. So as an example, O2I, but on your course at the very beginning, whoops, in the very beginning, right here, whatever your course says, that's the what you want to use, right? And you'll see they have different ones depending on what courses you have. Okay, so whatever this course number is for your class, that's what you're going to be using there. So that's what we use for our topic in this class. That allows me to search, make sure I don't miss any emails from students. And then you're going to put in a very clear description of what the email is about. Clarification request for Yellow Dig Module 1, Topic 2, right? Very clear what that email is going to be about and how I can respond and work with you. Okay, so that's just a few examples. All right, separate emails for separate topics. Why do we do it? And when is it appropriate? So, in pretty much anytime you are sending emails, if you have separate topics, you want to separate the emails, even if it's to stay in person, right? So, let's say that I am sending an email to my boss and I'm working on several things and I want to see if he's available for a meeting on the 12th, and I want to also talk to him about the project that I'm working on right now. But the meeting on the 12th isn't about the project. So you can see first off that if I include both of those things in the same email, it can get confusing what I'm actually asking for, right? So the meeting on the 12th, if it's not actually about the project that I'm talking about in the email, then he could be very confused as to what the meeting on the 12th is about. So I want to separate those into two emails. Even though I'm sending them back to back right away, one after the other, it doesn't matter because now he can take action and schedule a meeting with me on the 12th, and I can clarify what that meeting's for in that email so that he's prepared for that email or for that meeting. And then in a separate email, I can ask questions about the project that I'm working on. That allows him to separate them as different task items in order to appropriately schedule the meeting that's needed and prepare the materials, and then also to answer the question. Additionally, there may be a different audience for each of those emails, right? Scheduling a meeting with someone may only be the one person, whereas discussing a project could involve an entire team of people who need to be part of that conversation. And so that's where those CC lines come in and the blind carbon copies, right? And so we want to make sure we keep those separate. Additionally, if we have to go back to historical information and try to figure out what is happening with a project, if it is in a whole bunch of buried emails, right, where it says question in the subject line, and then it's like the third line item in four different topics, right, there's no way that you're going to go back and find that email again. But if it's very clear and it's a single topic for that one email, it's very easy to go back and find what you need. Okay. So it improves the way that people are able to take action on the idea, the different topics or the different items, and to be able to track whether or not they've got everything taken care of. It also improves the accuracy of what that subject line is, so much easier searching and record keeping. It is more audience targeted. So again, right, the group project, lots of people, scheduling a meeting, really just one. And then it also reduces cognitive overload, right? So if we're reading an email and there's four different topics in this one email, you're trying to think and resituate your brain into those different scenarios to be able to answer the different questions. And that can be very overwhelming and really easy to miss something that way. So we don't want to do that. We want to avoid that. So you do want to make sure that you are always sending separate emails for separate topics. Even if it seems like you're sending a lot of emails, it's way better than trying to put it all in one. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty and let's actually look at how we create this mock email in Word. All right, so very quickly, I'm going to show you just a couple of screenshots and then we're actually going to do it. So this first screenshot just shows you what that formatting is going to look like. You're going to use a soft return or shift enter after each of these to tighten up your spacing, and then you're going to use shift underscore to create the line underneath. Here you can see if you want to actually see what those actual keystrokes look like, this is your best friend. I love this paragraph symbol. When you click on this, it allows you to see the actual keystroke. So you can see here a soft return, or when you hit shift enter, is going to look like an arrow pointing to the left. Whereas a hard return is just a paragraph symbol, and that is the enter key. And the difference there is that when you utilize a soft return, it's going to put zero spacing in between the lines and keep everything tighter. And I'll show you here in just a second what that looks like. Whereas a hard return is going to give you whatever your spacing is set to. All right, so let's go over to Word, to a blank document, and we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check to make sure that our font and font style and size are correct. And then we're going to check our spacing. So under paragraph, we're going to click on this little arrow that's going to bring up our spacing. And we want to make sure that we have 0 before spacing and 8 point after spacing with single line spacing, okay? Anything and everything in this course, this is how this should be set. And then hit OK. You always want to check that first so that it affects the entire document. Once you started typing, it'll only affect the document from the point that you did it. And so then you end up with a lot of mismatched stuff and you don't want to do that. So always check your font size, and your spacing. Again, paragraph, this little down arrow, and then right here is the spacing piece that you want to look at. Okay. All right. So now that we have that done, we're going to start typing. So the first thing we're going to put is capital T, lowercase o, colon, and now we're going to shift enter. Now you can see here, I have that paragraph symbol turned on. I pretty much have it on all the time because I like to see where my keystrokes are. This allows me to avoid mistakes earlier, and so I'm not going back and having to fix a lot of formatting later. I can see exactly what's happening and what's going wrong if something's going wrong. So here you can see I've got that soft return, which is that arrow that points to the left, and you can see my spacing is much closer. All right. Now, if I do a hard return, which is just enter, you can see all of a sudden, right, there's way more spacing, and I don't want that here. Here, I want this to be tighter. So I'm going to backspace and do a shift enter. Okay. Again, shift enter BCC. Oh, you know what? I forgot my colon after CC, and shift enter for subject, colon. And then here I'm going to hit shift enter. I'm going to hit shift and the underscore key, go all the way across the page, back, and hit enter. So you can see I did use a hard return at the end of the underscore because that's going to give me a little bit more spacing. It's going to give me that 8 point spacing between the line and where I begin my paragraph. So here is where you're going to start answering your questions and start explaining to me what you need to explain on that assignment. Okay, so here you're going to start with explain what information belongs on each heading line, to, from, CC, BCC, and subject line. And just a really brief there because you're going to explain it in more detail later. Okay. All right, so you'll go ahead and answer all those questions. You're going to save it as a Word document. Remember, in this course, you cannot submit anything in a PDF. If you submit it in a PDF, you'll get a 0 and be requested to resubmit as a Word document the first time. After that, you'll just get zeros, and we don't want that. So just go ahead and submit it in Word doc, and then you're good to go. All right. So We will use this a couple of times, so make sure that you do save that as a template, mock email template, so that you can use it in the future as well. All right, that is it. That's all I have for you for this assignment. I hope you guys have a good time working with this. I hope you really enjoy utilizing that paragraph symbol. I find it incredibly useful, and I'm sure you will too. If you do have questions, feel free to email me. And as a reminder, you can text me if it is super urgent and you need me to look at that email as quickly as possible, and I will get to it as quick as I can. All right. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing your mock emails. Bye.